Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. You're watching Question Hour, a unique show where we get you questions asked by the members in the upper house and replies given by the ministries and departments. I'm your host, Rajat Kain, joined with my colleague, Kriti Mishra.
Thank you so much, Rajat. So, in this edition of the Question Hour show, we'll bring all the important unstarred questions or the written questions asked by the members of the upper house in the previous session of Rajya Sabha, which was the 252nd session of the Rajya Sabha or the monsoon session of Parliament. So, Question Hour is a very important tool in India's parliamentary democracy because it gives an opportunity to the members of Parliament to seek answers from the government, to hold the government accountable. Now, there are different types of questions as well, Rajat.
Well, broadly speaking, there are three categories of questions. One is starred, the unstarred, and the short notice one. Well, starred are the ones where replies are given directly on the floor of the House by the minister, whereas unstarred are the ones where replies are deemed to be considered laid on the table of the House at the end of the proceedings. In this format of a program, we'll emphasize, or rather we'll take up the unstarred questions fielded by the government and replied on the floor of the House.
So let's see what is the procedure of selection of these questions and how these questions are put forth by the members.
A member submits his or her questions at least 15 days before the office of Rajya Sabha chairman. The Rajya Sabha Secretariat chooses the questions to be answered through a draw of ballots. Separate ballots are held for starred and unstarred questions. The questions are scrutinized for admissibility under the current rules and precedents. Questions are disallowed if they are not in order. Advance copies of chosen questions are sent to ministry or departments concerned. The ministry concerns collect information to prepare the reply. The minister concerned reply to starred questions on the floor of the House and provides written answers to unstarred questions. Up to 160 unstarred questions are listed every day in a separate list. Well, there you saw how these questions are answered by the ministries and what exactly is the route as to when they are proposed by the members of the upper house, how the data regarding questions are collated and they're finally answered by the ministry concerned. Now, time to begin our show.
So the first question in this edition of the Question Hour show is from member M.V. Shriyams, and this question pertains to the Ministry of Home Affairs. And the member has asked about the total number of terrorist incidents in the country after the revocation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir and the steps taken by the government to combat the menace of terrorism.
Well, the revocation of Article 370 has been termed as a milestone by this government, and with that there has been a great impact on the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which is now in turn union territories of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. Now, the government, while answering the question which is answered by Minister of State for Home Affairs, G. Kishan Reddy, said the terrorist incidents have come down considerably in Jammu and Kashmir after the revocation of Article 370. Before 5th of August 2019, from 29th of June 2018 to 4th of August 2019, which comes out to be 402 days, the number of incidents were recorded to be 455. And in the period of after 5th of August 2019, that is from 5th of August 2019 to 9th of September 2020, again the period of 402 days, the incidents were recorded as 211. So considerable fall in the number of terrorism related incident in the state. No major terror attack took place in hinterland of the country during the period from 5th of August 2019 to 9th of September 2020. The government has adopted a policy of zero tolerance towards terrorism, has taken various measures such as strengthening of security apparatus, strict enforcement of law against anti-national elements, intensified cordon and search operations to effectively deal with the challenges posed by the terrorist organizations. Security forces keep a close watch on persons who attempt to provide support to terrorists and initiate action against them. Well, clearly, government explaining in its answer that they have been dealing with the incidents of terror in the state, and not just in the state but across the country, with several steps and measures taken by the ministry and various other departments of the government in combating the issue of terror, which India is firm about and has raised at several international fora as well. Well, moving on to another important question that was asked by MP Sujeet Kumar from Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The member has sought details as to how government plans or intends to regulate social media, which often has become platform for fake news and spreading hatred, which is putting society at risk.
So this is a very important question in the current scenario, and the response has been given by MOS meeting, Mr. Sanjay Dhotre, and he says that cyberspace is a complex environment with people, hardware, software and services on the internet. Now, cyberspace is borderless and it is coupled with the possibility of instant communication and anonymity. The potential of misuse of social media to spread hatred or fake news to disrupt peace and harmony is a global issue. Government of India is committed to free speech and expression, along with upholding the privacy of the citizens as enshrined in Constitution of India. The social media sites for user-generated content hosted and transmitted on their platform are intermediaries as defined in the Information Technology Act 2000, and they have to follow certain due diligence specified in the Information Technology Intermediaries Guidelines Rules 2011, notified under Section 79 of the Act. The intermediaries are required to inform the users of computer resources not to host, display, upload, modify, publish, transmit, update or share any information that is grossly harmful, harassing, defamatory, libelous, invasive of another's privacy, hateful or racially or ethnically objectionable, disparaging or otherwise unlawful in any manner. They are also expected to remove any unlawful content relatable to Article 19(2) of the Constitution of India, and when brought to their knowledge either through a court order or through a notice by appropriate government or its agency. And joining us on the question hour show is Rajya Sabha MP Mr. Sujeet Kumar. Mr. Kumar, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
During the 252nd session of the Rajya Sabha, you asked a very pertinent question on regulating social media that incites hatred in the society, that peddles fake news. Certainly a very important issue. The government says it's a global phenomenon.
During the monsoon session of the parliament, I had raised an unstarred question regarding regulating of social media, because online hatred, fake news, online manipulation, hate speeches have reached dangerous proportion in India. If Facebook is to be believed, then India probably is the single most nation in the world with the highest number of fake news and hate speeches being forwarded on WhatsApp and then being disseminated on Facebook. So I wanted to know from the government what the government's thinking is, because in 2019 September, the Honorable Supreme Court had directed the government to frame rules for regulating social media, and in October of the same year, the Government of India had submitted a petition, an affidavit at the Supreme Court, stating that in the next 3 months the government is coming out with a guideline and draft regulation for regulating social media. It's more than a year now, we are yet to see that draft guideline. And as of now, there are no legal provisions per se which can regulate online hate speeches, trolling, character assassination. All we have is the Indian Penal Code, we have the Information Technology Act of 2000, we have the IT Intermediary Guideline Rules of 2011. They are definitely necessary, but I think not sufficient. So I was keen to know from the government if the government was serious enough to come up with the draft guideline, which it was supposed to by January 2020, and the 2011 rules were also supposed to be amended, and the draft rule was circulated in the parliament by the then minister in 2018, but we haven't seen any further action.
The government also says that it is committed to upholding the privacy of the citizens, the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech. But then one has to strike a balance between the unregulated content on social media. So how do we strike that balance?
See, regulating social media is a very tricky issue. On the one hand, you have the freedom of speech and expression guaranteed by our Constitution under Article 19(1)(a), and the right to privacy is also read into the fundamental right by Honorable Supreme Court. On the other hand, you have online hate speeches and incitement to violence, trolling reaching very, very dangerous proportions. There are numerous examples where lynching, communal flare-up, mass lynching, mass murder have happened because of these online hate speeches. Some of these online hate speeches are dangerous. Some of them are not dangerous but definitely untrue. So we have to strike that balance. And I think after the 2015 judgment, Union of India versus Sriya Singhal, the Supreme Court had made it abundantly clear that freedom of speech and expression is sacrosanct. While striking down 66A of the IT Act, the Supreme Court made it very, very clear that unless it comes under the reasonable restriction clause of 19(2) of the Constitution, the provisions of the 66 or the IT Act would not be valid. But on the other hand, the Supreme Court is very, very cognizant of the fact that online hate speeches need to be regulated, and this is why it directed the Government of India last year to come up with a guideline so that social media could be regulated. So I do agree that it's a very, very tricky issue. We need to have a fine balance, and there are a lot of templates across the globe. In fact, Malaysia, Singapore, Germany, France, EU, Australia, almost all of these countries have stringent laws for punishing fake news. And I think we have enough examples across the globe, we have enough templates across the globe which can serve us as to how we can maintain that balance between freedom of speech, which is very, very sacrosanct in a democracy, and regulating hate speeches, regulating trolling, which is really, crippling our democratic system.
So since the government also says that it is a global phenomena, and you also talked about the templates, which template do you think suits our country as divergent as it is?
I think we have to design a template based on our own socio-cultural landscape. Indians by nature are storytellers, and we love gossiping. So I think there is no single template which can really suit us. What we could possibly look at is how Italy, for instance, has experimented with inculcating social etiquette, social media etiquette in the school curriculum, so that school children are aware and able to identify online hate speeches when they see it. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful experiment that they have done in 8,000 high schools of Italy, which we should definitely emulate or at least study. Germany has a provision where any social media intermediary, meaning social media platforms like WhatsApp, Twitter, etc., they have to remove any objectionable content within 24 hours of being flagged. In Australia, if any social media platform is found to be storing or disseminating objectionable content, then 10% of the annual revenue generated from that country, from that particular platform, has to be paid as a penalty. So yeah, there are multiple templates, and I think we have to follow a template which educates our citizens, and preferably the education should start at the school level itself. We need to adopt a template where the social media intermediaries or platforms can self-regulate, because I think self-governance, self-regulation is the best way to regulate social media. And finally, there has to be exemplary punishment and penal provisions if the platforms are found to be wanting in their social responsibility of regulating objectionable content.
Well, Mr. Kumar, that was a very valid suggestion that you gave to the government. Thank you so much for joining us on the Quest Now show.
Thank you very much.
And let's move on to the next question asked by member Banda Prakash, and this question is to the Ministry of Labour and Employment. And Mr. Prakash has asked the government about the number of migrant labourers in India, whether the government has identified them, and also the measures or steps initiated by the government for the welfare of these migrant labourers during the COVID pandemic.
Well, the issue of migrants during the COVID-19 pandemic, their movement and the welfare, the schemes by the respective states' government and the centre was a major talking point when this pandemic grew at the beginning of this year. Now, in the reply given by Ministry of Labour, by Minister of State for Labour, Santosh Kumar Gangwar, the ministry says it has prepared the reply after collating all the information from various state governments. Now, the reply, the government says The Ministry of Labour and Employment has set up control room across the country to receive and address the grievances of workers regarding wages during national lockdown in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. Various initiatives have been taken by the Ministry of Labour and Employment as part of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana and Atmanirbhar Bharat, which include payment of 12% employers' shares and 12% employee share under Employees Provident Fund, totaling 24% of wages by Government of India for 6 wage months from the March to August 2020 for all the establishment having up to 100 employees, with 90% of such employees earning less than 15,000 monthly wage. Reduction in PF contribution from 12 to 10% of wages for wage months of May, June and July 2020. Non-refundable COVID advance from the Provident Fund by amending the EPF Scheme 1952, extension the date of filing of returns, issuing advisory to promptly attend to distress calls of workers and employees and also guide them in temporary shelters, using buildings and other construction workers, cess fund for transfer of funds in bank account of construction workers affected by COVID-19 outbreak. In addition to above, measures have also been taken by ministries and departments under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana to support the poor, including migrant workers, such as provisions for food, grains, gas cylinders, free of cost, direct transfer of financial assistance into bank accounts of the beneficiaries. The government has also taken initiatives for creating jobs at local levels and supporting migrant workers through Atmanirbhar Bharat and Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan. Well, moving on to next question that was asked by member Sushil Kumar Gupta from Ministry of Civil Aviation. The member saw details of the testing facility of the international passengers who lands in India and also have a connecting flight or other domestic flights, how the COVID-19 test would be conducted at the airport itself.
So there's an elaborate response given by the government, and the response has been given by Civil Aviation Minister Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, and he says in order to facilitate the transfer of international tourists, RT-PCR testing has been allowed at the entry points on the airports on a pilot basis. Now, the salient features of the guidelines are: airport operator will create sample collection cum waiting lounge facility for RT-PCR testing. Waiting lounge should be located away from the operational area, should follow all sanitization and social distancing related guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, should have no unauthorized access, should provide necessary amenities to the passengers like Wi-Fi, F&B options, washrooms, etc., and should provide clothes option for making payments with regard to testing and various amenities. Airport operator shall provide option to the passengers to either stay at the waiting lounge awaiting the test results or to proceed to the designated hotel in order to isolate themselves till the result is available. Sample collection to be in strict compliance with the protocol established by ICMR and NABL. Passengers to do online booking of the RT-PCR test through respective websites or their appropriate online platforms. A well-defined flow to be laid down by airport operators for smooth conduct of testing at airports. Passport of the passenger to be retained by the state authority at the sample collection cum waiting lounge till the test results are available. If the test result is negative, passenger will be permitted to exit the waiting lounge and proceed to the departures to catch the connecting flight. However, if the result is positive, the passenger will be processed in line with applicable ICMR protocols by the state authorities, and no passenger will be allowed to make unauthorized exit from the respective airports. So those are the protocols put in place by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Let's move on to the next question, and this one is to the Ministry of Steel, asked by member Ripin Bora. And the member has asked about the challenges faced by the indigenous steel industry, and also if there is negative consumption of steel, and also the modernization and expansion plans of the government for sale subsidiaries and the disinvestment plans in the steel sector.
Well, Kriti, steel is a very important sector, and it's not just the indicator of the industrial productivity, but how the sector does also reflect in the larger macroeconomic picture, which has bearing on the larger economic picture of the country. Now, in the reply given by Minister of Steel, Dharmendra Pradhan, the minister, says that the national steel policy envisages to have a mammoth productivity of 300 million tons per annum by the end of 2030-31, and the ministry has taken several initiatives to achieve this target. Now, these steps are domestically manufactured iron and steel products policy for promoting procurement of made in India steel by government agencies, steel scrap policy for enhancing availability of domestically generated scrap, issuance of steel quality control orders for stopping non-standardized steel import of manufacturing. 113 SQCOs have so far been issued. Steel import monitoring system, that is SIMS, for advanced registration of steel imports. Draft framework policy to promote setting up of steel clusters having manufacturing units for value-added steel, ancillaries and capital goods. To ensure availability of raw materials to steel sector, Ministry of Steel has worked closely with Ministry of Mines and Ministry of Coal for auction and restart of expiring iron ore mines, extension of mine leases and steel CPSEs, setting up of coking coal washeries by CIL, BCCL, auction allotment of coking coal mines and diversification of coking coal imports as well. Now, 6 iron ore mining leases are due to expire in the year 2021. Ministry of Mines, through its order dated 16th of September 2019, has permitted Steel Authority of India Limited to sell fresh iron ore fines to extent of 25% of last year's production for a period of 2 years, as well as 70 million tons dump iron ore or fines from its captive mines. There is no specific policy of the government to disinvest steel sector in India. The government is following a policy of disinvestment through minority stake sale and strategic disinvestment. And lastly, the sale, that is Steel Authority of India Limited, currently has no plan for modernization and expansion of its subsidiaries. Well, these were litany of the steps taken by the ministry and the department concerned so as to have a better result in the production of steel and to achieve its target of having 300 million tons per annum productivity of raw steel by the year 2030-31. Well, the next question was asked by Dr. Bhagwat Karat from Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. The member asked if there is any policy to cut down on the import of crude oil and also have an improvisation of biofuels, especially in view of the surging petroleum prices in the international markets. Does India have any collaboration with any country to have any initiatives in this regard? And lastly, what are the details of the imported petroleum products in last 3 years?
So the response has been given by Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, and he says that the government has identified a number of strategies to reduce the import dependence on crude and also to enhance the production of oil and natural gas indigenously. He says the government has also encouraged the use of alternate fuels like ethanol and biodiesel by promoting the ethanol blending in petrol program. Government has also formulated a National Biofuel Policy 2018 to boost availability of biofuels in country to give a major thrust to ethanol blending program. All CPSCs or Central Public Sector Enterprises are establishing 12 2G ethanol plant across 11 states of the country. Government of India has also joined International Energy Agency's Technology Collaboration Program on Bioenergy, which is called IEA Bioenergy TCP on 25th of January 2019. This is an international platform for cooperation and information exchange among countries that have national programs in bioenergy research, technology development, demonstration and policy analysis. So Rajat, these were the important questions and answers that we filtered for our viewers in this edition of the Question Hour show.
Well, thanks Kriti, and thanks to your viewers for watching this edition of Question Hour. You can also watch all our programs on the online platform of YouTube and catch the latest updates about the news and other programs of Rajya Sabha TV on our Twitter handle. Thanks for watching RSTV.
Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands frequently and observe social distancing.